Welcome to Lawyer Business Advantage. This podcast is dedicated to helping attorneys earn more money, get better clients, and spend more time with family. I'm your host, Alay and founder of Law Firm Success Group. Smart business guidance for small law firms begins in 3, 2, 1. And it's my pleasure to welcome back to Lawyer Business Advantage after a long hiatus of about 30 seconds. Gary Johnson with J2 Marketing.
Thanks for having me back, Alay.
Yeah, anytime. So for those of you that didn't tune into last week's episode, please do. You'll get a lot more out of this week's. We were talking about business development styles and different kinds of business development and how, one person's business development style may not work for somebody else. And so one of the challenges that attorneys have in trying to learn business development from other attorneys is if that attorney's style doesn't mesh with theirs and isn't the same style, the attorney may not have any success. And we talked about a number of different styles, and we covered 3 different styles in the last episode. This episode, I want to start us off with the ladder climbers, and I don't mean that in a bad way. There are people who really enjoy structured situations where they can become a leader, whether that's in an organization or in an informal group, whether it's a formal leadership title or an informal one. But there are people that just really enjoy and thrive being leaders. And that is actually a very interesting lever that you can use to build a book of business. And Gary, you've done this and you've done an amazing job of it.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about how this idea of leadership can really be an asset for business development.
So I think first and foremost, people that are in leadership positions are looked up to. You automatically get the credibility. Whether you're a village idiot or you're like the smartest person on the planet, it doesn't make a difference. They see you as prominent. Like, well, she got to this position, she must be really good, right? So there is that perception of this person must be good at what they do. And I'll give you an example of that. When I first started with Provisors, which is a networking group, I was going through that, and I was the same coach and going through it year after year. And finally, they had tapped me and said, we want you to become a group leader. And just by getting that title, my business tripled overnight. Just from that, my services didn't change at all, like not at all. But the perception that, oh, he must be credible now that he's in a leadership role, completely changed. And whether you agree with that or disagree with that, it doesn't make a difference. It is a perception where they're like, oh, I'm not getting into these leadership roles for that reason, It's going to happen no matter what. So we need to kind of lean into that and allow people to understand that. Here's the other thing is, as a leader, you should be a servant. You should be doing servant leadership. So you should be helping other people out instead of just look at me. I'm a narcissist. I don't care about anybody else, scorched earth, that is for a very short amount of time. And so we want to be those servant leaders that are caring about other people, because when people get that sense, they go, wow, Alay really cares for me. I think you are brilliant at that, especially when you are running your provisor group. People would say the kindest things about you. And I'm like, are they talking about the same Alay that I know?
I paid them very well for that.
Yeah. But they have that. And so what happens is that when people feel this, it's not what you say about people, it's how they feel, I screwed that whole quote up, but you get my point is, how do people feel when they're around you? As a leader, when they feel important and they feel cared for, then they're attracted to that leader and they follow that leader, and that leader has more cachet. And so when they're saying certain things or they're doing certain things, there's more weight behind it. As long as you are being that servant leader and you are caring about other people and you're like, let's go, everybody, let's go in the same direction, and trying to lead them with a vision, it becomes really, really important. And so we see a lot of attorneys that will get onto boards. And they're like, okay, and this goes back to that last video where you're like, well, the Rainmaker is on this board, so I'm going to get on a board. That in and of itself is good. Now let's take it to where it can be great. And that is where you actually get involved in that organization. I've seen a lot of attorneys who just, they show up and they don't do anything. And they're on the board because they paid a $10,000 check and they have their name and their law firm. That's it. They don't do anything. That doesn't get you the same sort of cachet that you could be getting by being a leader within that organization and working your way up within that organization as well. And it all comes to, how are you caring about whatever that is, whatever that organ, whether it's the bar association, whether it's a charity, it doesn't make a difference. You should be trying to look to go up.
Totally. And I see this happen a lot with two specific organizations. One is bar associations, like you mentioned. The other is Rotary. Um, Attorneys
Mm,
oftentimes join these organizations with the idea of, getting business. And both organizations will produce business, but that's not their primary function. And so,
right.
attorney entrepreneurs, if you're thinking about, or if you're in Rotary and you're in your bar association and you're looking at those things for business development tool vehicles, for God's sake, stop. I mean, be in the bar association because you want to be with your colleagues and aspire to, as Gary and I are talking about, a leadership position which will require you to care and it will require
Mm-hmm.
you to invest time. And if you're going to join Rotary because it's a phenomenal community service organization. Will you get business from it? Probably, but that's not why you're in Rotary. You're in Rotary because you care about the mission, you care about serving your community, and you have the time to really contribute to your chapter and go to, meet weekly and meet in between and help with the fundraising.
Yep. It's totally true. And I found that when I put all my effort into an organization, I got a lot of business from it. But to your point, I wasn't doing it for that. Like, it wasn't like, okay, I'm going to be a part of this organization because I'm going to make so much money, da 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 da. Because every relationship that you're building is based on, what can you do for me? Instead, when you're just giving and you're just being a servant, it just starts to roll in. I mean, it really, really does roll in. And I've personally seen that. Like, I do a lot for the Alzheimer's Association. And when I am all in, I get a lot of business from that, a lot of business from that. But I didn't do it for that reason. I was doing it to raise awareness and raise money for this awful disease. So it was like, okay, now I'm like, holy cow, I'm getting business from this. Like, oh, this is really good. The reason why is because people are like, he's not such an asshole. Like, holy cow, he actually has a heart. This is kind of cool. I'm telling you, attorneys have that reputation of being a-holes. And when they do something really good and they really truly are doing it really good, oh my gosh, people see them in a totally different light, a totally different light. That's a powerful thing. That's a very powerful thing.
Absolutely. And um, kind of wrapping up the leadership side of things, whether you're going to be a formal leader or an informal leader, do it from a place of authenticity, I think is what you and I are both talking about. Please don't
Yeah.
just do that because you're driven to build a book of business and people have told you that if you join a board and you're active and you get a leadership position, you're going to get business because it can actually be a detractor if you don't do a good job as a leader. Um, and it will become very obvious to everybody, that you don't care about the organization very quickly because you're not going to have time to do it. So
Yeah.
do it authentically or don't do it at all. Um, and attorneys have an amazing kind of a cool capability, which I think is really, really neat, which, you and I as coaches generally don't have, which is the ability to just show up to a family event, sports event, any kind of organized event, and say, oh yeah, I'm an attorney, I practice law. And it's amazing if they're in the right events how much business just saying those kinds of things can do. So
Oh yeah.
let's talk a little bit about, and this is something I think that a lot of attorney entrepreneurs can resonate on. Let's talk about leveraging, and this is going to sound terrible, but let's talk about leveraging your kids. It
Yes.
costs a lot of money.
Yes.
Let's get some value from them. And so the idea behind that is if your kids are involved and you're an involved parent with your children's activities, that is actually a really good business development opportunity, isn't it, Gary?
It totally is. One of my clients, she is a what she calls a soccer mom, and she gets a lot of business from that. And because she's always going to her kids' soccer games and practices, and she's the team mom, and so she's bringing refreshments and da 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 da. And when she talks to people, they're like, "Oh my gosh, you're an attorney?" Like, we thought, and then fill in the blank. We thought attorneys were, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. It all depends on their experience, right? But then you're actually showing up as you. Like, all the pretense goes away. You're like this happy mom that is really, really connected with her kids and cares about their kids as well. Those things are really cool. I mean, they're really cool. And you're spending time with your kids, like, and the people that surround your kids, which are other kids and their parents too. And you connecting with those people is just a great way. Here's the other thing is, and hopefully this isn't going off too much of a tangent, but I had one client who did estate plans, and he was Mormon, and I asked him one of the very first times that we worked together. I said, "How much business do you get from your church?" And he was like, "Don't go there." And I'm like, "What do you mean don't go there?" He goes, "Don't go there. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to be selling to my church." And I was like, oh, interesting. "How long have you been selfish?" And he's like, "What?" I go, "How long have you been selfish?" And he's like, "Why are you thinking I'm selfish?" I'm like, "Well, do you care about your church?" He's like, "Yeah." "Do you love your church?" "Yeah." "Do you love the congregants in your church?" "Yeah." "Is it a great tight knit community?" He's like, "Yeah." I go, "Well, let me ask you a different question. Estate planning. Are there any bad estate planning attorneys out there?" "Yeah." "Are there any attorneys that overcharge, that don't do, good work, da, 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 da?" He's like, "Yeah." And I go, "Do you ever do that?" And he goes, "No." I go, "Are you fair?" "Yeah." "Okay, so bringing it back to your congregation, you're okay with your congregation going to those people who are going to take advantage of them?" That's, I think, a very selfish, individual. And literally his mind shift to that was like, I am being of service to my community, to the people, right? I'm being authentically myself. Why would I not want to put it out? Now, I'm not saying you beat it into it. "Hey, here's my card, here's my card, here's my card." Talk about what you do and the value that it has for your clients. It's a powerful thing. Why would you not want that? Because you are doing something really good for them. You're keeping them out of, harm's way. You're enabling them to navigate maybe a very challenging situation. That's a good thing. And you can do that with your kids' events, with your community that you surround yourself with. It's just a beautiful thing, but it's a mindset. It's totally a mindset to be like, okay, this isn't selling, this is serving. Big difference between the two.
It
Big
is.
difference
It
between the
is.
two.
And where do you draw that line, Gary, between selling and serving in these situations?
When you are pushing something that is not needed, you need, like, here's a good example of this, not in the attorney world. Life insurance. I had somebody who I met, and he was like, "Let me show you my process so that when you refer business over to me, you'll understand that." Well, really what he was trying to do is sell me more life insurance. And I was like, "Look, I got enough." And he was like, "You never can have enough." And he just pushed and pushed and pushed. I never talked to him after that, because all he was doing was what was right for him, not what was right for me. And that is what I call manipulation. I'm all for persuading, I'm all for influencing, but I'm not for manipulating. And how I define the two is with persuasion and influence, it's a win-win situation. Both parties win. In manipulation, one party wins, the other one loses. And that's where, we typically think of the used car salesman who is like, Alay, I've got this really great car, and it's a piece of crap. And they will try and lie their tails off, to get you into that car. And that's all about manipulation. That's not persuasion.
So I actually, I would draw that line a little bit earlier. Because I think our personalities are different once again. I'm that person who, will just kind of not want to promote my services unless I see an opportunity, and then of course I'll go for it. Which is why I like structured networking, but that's another conversation.
Mm.
So the idea is, if you are someone who's contributing, whether it's to your kids' sports teams or an organization like Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts or 4-H or whatever it happens to be, or the band or involved in the school, you're connecting and you're working with other adults, other parents who have kids in the same activities. Please, please, please do not make the mistake of just showing up and doing your work, because I know you have a lot going on. You show up, you do your work, and then you're out of there. Connect with the other parents that you're working with. Please, please, please connect with them as people, because A, it's going to make your experience more fun. B, it's going to make sure that you get more done because you're working with them. And C, you're going to know what they do, and they're going to know what you do. And when you say that you're a lawyer, immediately people remember that because they're always looking for a lawyer they can trust.
Yes.
Right?
Amen.
Yep. So when they need one, or when they know of someone who needs one, who are they going to call?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely. And also the other thing about that, and this is probably a little bit longer, another podcast, is storytelling. How are we telling our stories with the people that we surround ourselves with? Because those also illuminate what we do without selling, without being like, hey, so hey, let me tell you, and it doesn't do any of that kind of stuff, because I think connection is the most important thing that you can do, with people with attorneys who are charging a lot of money for their services. It's connecting with other people because of what you just said. They trust you, and then they'll go, "Hey, Alay, I know you do this. Could you help me potentially with this matter?" And it's always like, I don't know. Let's find out. Let's explore this. Instead of going, yeah, hey, I can help anybody and everybody. You're like, that's a red flag right there. But I think stories are a powerful, powerful way. Like George Lucas, he knows how to tell a story, right? He's pretty good
Sometimes.
at it. We can't be perfect. Can't be perfect.
That's right. That's right.
Good old
So
stars.
we've talked a lot about different styles of business development here. One thing we have touched on a little bit but haven't really jumped into is the people who just love speaking. Let's talk about that
Yeah.
a little bit. There is something about standing up on a podium, whether it's virtual or in person, and throwing down a really meaningful talk. Doesn't have to
Yeah.
be about the law. But if you're someone who enjoys public speaking, that can be a tremendous asset in building your business. So Gary, how have you worked with clients to leverage their talents and interest in speaking?
Yeah, I try and give them strategies that will enable them to connect with the audience on a deeper level as well. Because you can give a bunch of information, but if you're really not connecting with them, it's going to either go right over their heads, or it's going to be dull and boring. And really good speakers can really understand the importance of the experience that people get when you're doing a presentation. And then go, "Ooh, this is really good." And it's not the loudest individual, and it's not the person who is flailing about, on stage, but it's being very purposeful about what you're talking about and what is the experience that the people in the audience or the people that are on Zoom or whatever are experiencing. Because we've all been to presentations that are boring and we lose interest. And then we do this. We're like, I'm picking this thing up because this is a whole lot more interesting than this person who is talking, right? And that loses everything, right? All the preparation that person did loses. So we have to understand what is the experience that those individuals are going to have in this.
Spot on, spot on. Yeah,
Yeah.
because if you're talking to other attorneys, maybe maybe the focus of your talk is on the law. But if you're talking to people who are not attorneys, maybe the objective of that talk isn't really about the law, about the details of the law. It's about getting them to trust you. And so this is a very interesting spin on things. Maybe start a talk if you're talking to non-attorneys who you would like to impress, build relationships with, connect with, whether they're referral sources or clients. Talk about why you became an attorney. Talk about your journey as an attorney and your early experiences and some of the most emotional cases that you've handled and see what happens to that room. There's a reason why there's so many movies and so many books and so many TV shows about the law. It is dramatic, it is interesting, it is powerful, and it is meaningful. And if you can harness that, that is way more powerful than diving into the details of an estate plan.
Yep, 100%. And that goes back to the stories, right? If we're intentional about our stories, it becomes so much easier to do. The other thing that I would highly recommend, and this one I have to push quite a bit with attorneys, is to give the audience 3 takeaways. 3 things that they can do based on this. Because I've heard too many times attorneys that are great presenters and they're giving this information, but it's all scare. It's like, this is going to happen if you don't, and I know we're on the estate planning thing, but if you don't do your estate plan, this could happen, and this
Or
could
we could
happen.
switch to employment law.
Yeah, an employment law, right? If you don't have this and this and this, these are the things that could happen. And then they do this. And if you want to get rid of those, hire me. I can help you. The mistake there is that they don't know if what you're going to do is actually going to help them with that. So if you give them 3 easy things that can take away, they're going to go, valuable to me. I'm glad I showed up. I'm glad I came here, not to be scared, but to add value. And let me tell you, 98% of the time, they're not going to do those 3 things. What they're going to do is hire you, because they're going to go, wow, that's good advice. Like, I should look at this and I should do this. And I need to make sure that we do these, like employment law. We need to make sure that we're documenting everything. Okay, not sure exactly how we're going to do that. Okay, I got to hire them. Like, right? And it just comes into, but if you're like only scare and then you just say, and I can help you overcome those things, and you leave it at that, people are going to go, that's a sales pitch. That's all it is. It's a sales pitch. And it's funny because the attorneys who are like, I hate selling, and they're great presenters, they're only like they're trying to shove this stuff down people's throat. And I'm like, and you wonder why you hate it. Like, and they don't get results off of it as well. And so giving people some easy takeaways that enables them to go, you know what, Alay is really smart. He knows what he's talking about. I feel confident and comfortable to hire him as my attorney, as my coach, whatever it may be.
Speaking of takeaways, I'm not going to ask you for 3 takeaways, Gary, but but I will ask you to tell us about some things you're really looking forward to in your business over the next year or so.
So in the next year, what I'm looking forward to is starting up my group coaching and bringing attorneys together that I can not only coach in a group setting, but that will also be in community and network together, because they will get to know each other a whole lot better. They'll be able to connect with each other so they can refer business back and forth. And attorneys, more so than almost any other profession out there, are referral basis. They refer each other business all of the time. And you talk about this a lot, the cooperation. I always screw up that word.
Co-opetition. Yeah.
Thank you. Where you have two patent attorneys and they are typically referring each other more business than any other attorneys. But a lot of them are like, no, they do what I do, dukes up. Like, I don't want to be around that person. You're losing out on opportunity right there. So if I can bring these people together, that they go, ooh, I know the systems that J2 marketing is teaching, and I get that all of those different elements, and they're doing the same thing, and we're collaborating together, and we're being in community. It'll make it so that they trust each other so much better. So I'm so passionate about launching this. If I wasn't in the middle of a move, I would be doing it right now. But unfortunately, life happens.
Well, you are doing it right now because you're on the podcast and we're talking about it.
Oh yeah, that's true.
and if people want to connect with you and reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Best way is either email or LinkedIn. I'm always on LinkedIn, and my email is just garyj@j2marketingconsultants.com. Those are the two best ways to connect. Yeah, or they can call my toll-free. I'm kidding. They can look at the billboard of my face up there.
Gary, as always, it's a pleasure to have you on the show and a
I
ton of
catch
fun. Thank you so much for being on Lawyer Business Advantage today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Alay. I really appreciate it. And by the way, congratulations again on being one of the top legal podcasts in the entire nation. That is huge for the legal world. So, and it's a lot of hard work, and I know you put in it, and you're a servant. You really are doing what you preach, and I appreciate that very much because I always learn from your podcast. So thank you for having me on.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate that.
And that's a wrap for this episode of the Lawyer Business Advantage podcast. One thing that would really help both us and other new potential listeners is for you to rate this show and leave a comment in iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you tune in to listen. And I want to hear from you, so connect with me on LinkedIn and let me know what you think of this episode. And if you are a solo or an owner of a small law firm, and you're looking to earn more money, attract better clients, or reduce your stress, we would love to talk with you to see how we can help. Request your free law firm assessment by visiting lawfirmsuccessgroup.com. Again, that URL is lawfirmsuccessgroup.com. We look forward to talking with you soon. Thank you for listening. My name is Alay Yajnik. Until next time, remember, you can seize freedom. You can embrace happiness. You can build your perfect practice.